So I'm Chris. I'm the co-founder at Inential. As I mentioned, Inential is the company that's organizing this webinar. We are a employee growth assistant that is supporting tech companies, so software scale-ups and software consulting companies with people development, helping them how to set it up and how to run the people development initiatives in their teams. And Thomas, I'll quickly introduce Thomas in a second. Just wanted to use this opportunity as well to briefly introduce you into Inential, how it actually works. This is very short introduction. So with Inential and our employee growth assistant, we help you analyze your teams and individual needs, looking at specific skills that you can develop in your team. Then based on those needs, we help you generate personalized growth plans. We also integrate with a library of over 50 providers like Udemy, Pluralsight, and so on. And you can access all of these providers in one platform. And in those growth plans, we give you recommendations of the learning courses that you can access from those providers. We also manage the entire administrative process for you. And this is basically the next step where you can use your learning budgets on Inential that you provide to your teams and access and manage them all through Inential without any effort. You can also request content that is from outside of, so if you, for example, introduce, let's say, certain conferences or other online courses to Inential from that you want to use, we can also purchase that content. So a lot of teams are using us since already 3 years, and we're happy to talk more about this. And you can always contact me. At the end, we're also going to provide a contact link to me or to Dan, my co-founder, who is also here in the chat. I'm pretty sure he's going to write if he sees any questions from you about Inential. But let's get back to Thomas. So Thomas is our guest here, and he's going to be the main person talking after me. I'll be asking a couple of questions, and we will be following your questions as well. With Thomas, we know each other already for a couple of years. Thomas is an advisor at Inential. He has been working previously as head of HR and head of people at multiple companies. The last one was Yodel, where he was also growing his HR and people development team. And now at the startup and scale up Power Us, where he's doing a lot of work, not only with people development, but also with that. So Thomas, maybe you can briefly introduce yourself as well from your perspective, and we can get started. You can tell us also why, setting up people development is now important to you and why you're doing it at Power Us, and just maybe you can give a short intro.
Yeah, sure. So thanks for inviting me. Happy to share some insights today. And as Chris already mentioned, feel free to jump in, ask questions. I think having this as an interactive session is always very valuable for everyone. So yeah, as Chris mentioned, I'm very familiar with startup environments. Usually I come in when they want to scale and when they want to also hire the first head of HR, head of people, however they want to call it. That's usually my role, jumping in, building up the HR team, and then taking care of scaling the organization. At Yodel, it was from 30 to 120 people in 1 year. So that was quite aggressive growth, I would say. Now, since February, I'm here at Power Us. We are focusing here on the skilled blue-collar workers, building a platform for them that they can find great jobs. And here the company is also in a very, very good position and also wants to grow. And since February, we grew already from 60 to, tomorrow a few more people will join, then we nailing the 100 people already. So also a very ambitious growth plan. I also have the experience that when companies want to grow, typically from the employee life cycle, you are not naturally focusing on people development mainly. So for me, as a generalist in the HR field and with a background as a business psychologist, I always know to retain and to engage people in a working environment. It's also very important to take care of their personal development. From a recruiting perspective, we are talking to a lot of people, try to active source and headhunt them basically from other companies. And what they are mostly saying is that they are looking for a new job because they can't develop anymore in that environment. So it's a very often mentioned reason when people want to switch. But on the other side, when you build up a company and you want to grow, it's not your first step you are tackling. So it's always the question, when to prioritize, how much of it. But you have to do it at one point for sure. And the question is how complex you want to build it, because you can go very deep and very extended way, build crazy plans. And I've also done this in the past with skills metrics and career development plan from IC track to manager track to something in between. So I really love this topic, but yeah, now at PowerUs, we also figured out we have to do something. I can go already a bit deeper on that if you want.
Yeah, go ahead.
So typically, how do I make my life in HR easier is that I'm asking the people around me what they need. So, that's typically with an employee survey, you have this in place ideally, or you talk to the people in one or the other way, you should get that input from them. And this is also what we did here already. And at PowerUs, we are currently running the employee surveys every quarter. And 2 quarters in a row, we got the information from our existing employees that beside of having a bigger office, because we are growing, they want to have an outlook on their career development. They want to have something in place. So that was for me definitely a signal, a strong signal, of course, that we have to do something with it. On the other side, I have to build up the HR team, I have to build up the recruiting team, we have to grow a lot. So again, naturally, it wouldn't be on my agenda now in the strategy to focus on that topic too much. So we were on that point that we said, we have to do something, but we have to be very careful how much we will do here. So that's why I think it's very well fitting at the moment to discuss how you can start with something. Because he was so far, except of an educational budget that I think most of the startups, they have something like that, but also most of the startup, I would guess they are not using it properly. So it's always a nice benefit for recruiting, but then it's not really something happening with it. And it was very similar here. And then we said, let's check what's the actual need. When the employees say they need something for career development, what they really need in detail. So I did a little workshop with a diverse group of people, from team leads, from finance, from account management, engineers, ICs and engineering, so individual contributors, different levels, different backgrounds. And we discussed this in a structured way, checking what they see as current challenges when it comes to the topic and what are the needs. What would the personal need that they would say afterwards, we improved that topic by 10x or whatever. So that's significantly improved. And in the end, we came up with several elements, and that was very interesting because you can cluster the elements of career development within a work environment in different ways. Now, for me, always very important to highlight, we have to separate this from performance management. This is something what I learned already very early in my career. In old traditional environments, you have your annual performance conversation, your manager is telling you, you are good here, you are not good here. And especially where you're not performing well, this is the gap that is identified to use it to learn in that environment, in that area. But this is, for me, so unnatural. This is so against the logic of learning, because you should be motivated to follow your intrinsic motivation. This is what I'm saying already for a very long time. And this is also how I tackle this here right now, that I try to build structures and environments that people can decide based on their role, of course, within a working environment. But other than that, let's say they're very free in choosing what they want to do. But they have to decide, I want to learn and I want to check what I can learn. So that's why I think having several pillars within that is very important, and not just top down. You are bad here, you have to improve now. You're bad in presentation, you have to improve your communication skills. So this is how I tackle this in general. And when I discussed it with the people here in the environment, they mentioned things like they want to have regular conversations. They want to have ideas, insights, access to something, because that's also something what I see and heard very often, especially in startup environments where you have, for example, first-time managers. They might not be the most experienced domain experts in a specific domain, but the employees, they have the expectation that my manager should tell me what I can learn. So this is very hard, Then the manager is very quickly overwhelmed by this. So, but still, there is this need. This is what I wanted to figure out. There is this need of having something, access to a library, for example, to check what could they do, for example, with the educational budget to use that. But also in general, I'm standing here as a data analyst, for example. I want to become a data engineer or whatever. So what do I need to do? What can I do? Where should I start? You know, there's so much out there. And just Googling would be, I think, not enough. So you're then also quickly overwhelmed. If you're a regular employee, how should you figure out what's now good for you to learn? So that was definitely also a strong need. Regular conversations, access to library. So to summarize that, also career progression framework, which would be then coming down to, in the end, there's also more behind that. It's not just having an explicit definition of I'm at the junior level here and I want to know how to earn more money and how to go to the next career ladder step, but it's in general just knowing what is expected from me. And that doesn't mean I need to know what's expected from me in 3 years. I want to know what's expected from me right now to continue in my career. Here it was very quickly clear that building such a career progression framework is usually a huge effort within an environment to develop this with the teams together. So, but also to figure out that this is a need is good to know, because then you can also say if you want to focus on that right now or not. So making this clear, we put this in the backlog because for now, with the huge growth we are facing right now, I cannot, as a one man, and maybe I should say a bit more about the people structure here, because within my team, I have 3 recruiters, I have 2 working students, I have 1 person in people operations. People operations means basically office management, onboarding, offboarding, and the IT structure around it when you onboard people. So on the side of kind of HR business partner topics, developing something like career development, this is fully on me. So on that front, I'm alone at the moment, and I have to work through it. So I had to very consciously choose what to do and what not, especially because it's a kind of side topic at the moment, given our current circumstance and the stage in which we are. So that was a very interesting journey, because in the past, when I also discussed this with other head of people or VP people or learning and development experts, you can really easily blow up this whole approach of building a career progression framework. Sometimes they're saying, we have to start with that, but it's such a huge thing. And in our environment here, we are very focused on velocity and going very fast, building something and then improving it, because you have to iterate it anyways. So I came up with the idea, after getting all this information from the people, let's have regular conversations, let's implement or add our educational budget to that. And additionally also, and that was always a dream for me to implement something like that, like educational vacation days, because that was also asked from that group, that you make your plan and then the reality kicks in and you cannot follow your plan. So we want to also explicitly give time for the people that they can book in like vacation basically, but they book it then for their personal learning. And then having an individual career development plan. That's always my approach when I am tackling that topic. It's always my first step to say, you need to take over the ownership. It's your responsibility if you want to develop yourself. And we provide, as a company, we provide the structures and we support you on that. But against this traditional old environment, against this mindset, against those practices, I always see there's the employee's responsibility to start at one point, to say, I want to learn, I want to develop myself. And then, of course, we can help, we can discuss what you want to do and how we can support you. But therefore, I built a guideline and basically individual templates that everyone can use, define the development areas, go to line manager, can come to me as the head of people, can go to colleagues, can go to external experts, get some input, what they should do. And then, they have the individual plan, they have budget, they have days, and they have a structure in which they can have regular check-ins with the line manager. And this is where we started right now. I presented this on Monday. No, Monday was public holiday, on Tuesday in our all hands. So it's really fresh here from that environment, what I'm telling you.
But did you do this also in the previous companies similar way, or this is now you're testing, let's say, kind of a new approach, new process?
For me, this approach that everyone is in charge of their own development is just my, how I believe this has to be tackled. And this is how I also did this. I think when we had our first discussion 5-6 years ago at the company, this is how I always did it. This was my natural approach. I mean, at this company, back in the days, we worked with a self-organized approach. So with holacracy, it was naturally that things you want to change, things you want to do, you are in control of that. You have to start with it. Maybe that was for me also a good influence to build people development in a self-organized environment, because there is no manager who will tell you what you have to do. But this is still how I carry this around. Also, let's say more traditional top-down environments, like a typical startup. Only, I think, very few startups working with holacracy or something like that. Most of the startups that I know, they're working with typical C-level, VP, head of management structures. But still, I believe that everyone has to drive their own career. And
so if you would, for example, let's say, take just to consider, let's say, like action points here for anyone who is setting this up, right? Like, what would be like the top 3 things that you would do first? Let's say similar setup, you're the only person basically dealing with that as a head of people. Probably you don't have so much help, or maybe there is a little bit of help from the people who are working in your teams, but they're probably busy more with recruiting and other topics rather than people development. So what would be like the top 3 things you would recommend doing first? Obviously, you've already had this previous experience in the past. Just let's say, what would that be if you joined a new company?
Yeah, I would never skip the step of talking to the people. Either you have it in the data, but not just very high level where people saying we need something in personal development, career development, because that, as I mentioned, this can be everything and nothing. Can be budget, can be structures, can be regular conversations, can be a huge system, because they have seen this in a more structured environment before. So you don't know what they need. So I would always, so even though I had this experience from the companies before where I built up those structures several times, I could go into this environment here right now, and I could do it the same way as I did it before, but I always would do it now with something like, I mean, this workshop took me, I think, 90 minutes, and then I had real actual data insights about the environment here. So
and who did you have in the workshop? Was it with anyone from the teams or team leads, managers? Who did you who participated?
Yeah, here in that workshop, we had team leads and we had regular employees, as I said, with different backgrounds, engineers, salespeople, customer success, because the basic need of having something, it's the same. It was good that also team leads were included, because they have also another perspective. They can also bring in their perspective, what they need as a manager, but they are also at the same time employees of the company. Yeah, so that was very interesting to have this maximum diverse group of people. Of course, if you have more time, you could also split it up in employees and then only with the managers, because they have in the end also different needs when it comes to having such a system, because they're getting approached and need to do something. But if you're really, really limited, then don't care too much about setting up the perfect setup, workshop structures. Just have a diverse group, jump in, and let's have them brainstorming and giving some ideas what they need. So this, I would never skip this. And once you have these insights, then it will always end in regular conversation structures. Either they're asking for specific feedback structures or having conversations in general. Here I also had several times not only having conversations with line manager, but also having HR included. So, and then, as I said, this is the whole thing about regular structured conversations. And I truly believe that this is already 50% or more. If every environment would have very well structured regular conversations between the employees and line manager that are purely focused on their personal development, I think so many things would be already solved. This is for me a very crucial starting point. So,
and what is frequent here for you? Should it be like regular, weekly, every month, every quarter? What do you think?
yeah, in the beginning, to kick off something, it's a bit more often. Let's say if the employee now starts it, I duplicate the template, they can start brainstorming, drafting something. Then it will be maybe can be sub point basically in the weekly one-on-one. That's one thing. But later, once it's in a rolling modus, let's say, I would say quarterly. I usually do this latest after probation period, but you can kick this already off during the probation period, after the 3rd month, for example, and then after probation period, quarterly career conversation. Yeah, this is
okay. And so basically, so from what I understood, is what you would do is like the first thing is to basically set up a session could be with managers, could be with the ICs or individual contributors, figure out what they should be doing, but not skipping for sure the one-on-one conversations. This is kind of like a baseline for you in terms of people development, using, let's say, some sort of structured approach for a plan or a growth plan. As you mentioned, you had some templates for that, and then developing this way further. Is there anything else that you think is like critical, where you would say, hey, don't skip that, or keep it in mind, maybe it's important element in the entire puzzle?
Yeah, I think, of course, once you release it, you have to also talk to the line managers. You should not just release and say, now this is the process for everyone, but this is more, I think, project management related, how you roll it out. But just to build something, as I said, especially in my environments where I'm working in startups, the access to additional resources is, yeah, it's not really there. If you have a, let's say, more established environment, you might have enough senior leaders, and still the world is so quickly changing all the time. There's so much new knowledge produced all the time. I think still having a structured learning library, for example, helps a lot. Yeah, that you really have something that you can connect to that. So you have your either can be a Google Word template or a Notion template. That's in the first place, it doesn't matter. You just need to have this source of truth for everyone, where everyone can place their own development areas, and then add something like a library. It's really helpful, because otherwise people will run around, approach everyone, approach me. I have to say, I have no time, I have no capacity to now start researching institutes, learning materials for you, but this saves a lot of time later if this is already added. And then you can take it from there. I mean, other levels later, they're going more in specific learning directions. If you want to strengthen more the soft skills in the organization, adding coaching, adding mentorship, or whatever. So
yeah, but these are already like next steps, next layers.
Exactly. But
after
having those structures already in place, this helps you already a lot.
Okay, perfect. Yeah. And what do you think, like, what should be the first, like, when a company, let's say, starts setting it up? I mean, you said you're already like, what, I think around 100 people this year, right? So this is you know, planning on growing quite a bit. Like, when do you think a company should start thinking about it, and also how to basically convince, let's say, the shareholders that, hey, this is a relevant topic, if they maybe don't have experience previously with it?
Yeah, so I think when you are in a smaller environment of 30, 40 people, let's say, of course, when I worked in the first company where I thought about this, we're also around that amount of people. And if you have this knowledge already and you know how to build it, of course, it's always valuable to implement it. But I think in a smaller environment, the people are better connected to each other, and everyone has to be a bit more self-driven, let's say. So it might be not the biggest challenge then that you have to implement those specific structures. But when you know that you are growing, and I would say beyond 70 people towards 100, that's typically the stage where companies should then think about, because suddenly you don't have this personal connection to everyone anymore. You don't know the individual needs anymore. it's also the latest point where you should implement a proper engagement survey tool to get this data. And then once you have this data, so if you implement such a tool before you see that this is an raising topic, then you see it in the data. And this is, I mean, still the best point. If you go to the management, to the decider in the end, and you show them, look, this is, you can either get this from the engagement survey, you can get this as input from exit interviews when people leaving the company and telling you after 2 years, there was no development progress for me anymore. So once you have, it's always the data that you need to get from your employees, basically. Ideally from an engagement survey, that's the most efficient and reliable way. Could be also engagements, exit interviews or other conversations. But yeah, then you have the data, and then it's obvious, because companies, they want to keep and retain the best employees, and they want to develop them, progressing them in their domain, and therefore you need to have the structures.
So, yeah, so basically to retain top talent, it's better to do this engagement service early rather than during exit interviews find out that this was an issue. So tracking this data probably is relevant early in the process. One thing which is relevant, I think, with the people development is that people get started with, say, working on their plans, and then work comes in, you're busy with your projects or whatsoever. Like, how do you basically keep people engaged? Is it even relevant for you that they are actually completing what they've planned? Is this a job of the line manager or the manager who should actually look into this, or whose job is that, or who should basically deal with this?
Yeah, I think I definitely want to hold also line manager accountable here. I mean, the first initial kickoff is kind of voluntary. That's again, everyone should by themselves think about, I want to develop myself. So it's nothing that we force top down, but we say, you have to develop yourself now. I mean, there are in a separate way performance conversations. That's another topic, but just for the career development, if an employee says, I want to start with that, they will kick it off. But then the regular conversations, which could be then every quarter, is together with the line manager. And of course, now over time, we will see how it will evolve, but I would also expect that line managers will check if you decided to do a specific course or to finish something and you couldn't complete it for, I don't know, the second time. And I mean, that's why we want to implement those vacation days for learning, that you also plan the time that you can finish it. But let's see how it will work out. But I would expect that they would check in on that and discuss why couldn't you complete it and how can we support you that this will happen. Because in the first place, we believe if we choose this, if we choose the path and we align on that there will be also some value generated out of it. So not doing it is then, yeah, why not? What can we do that you will solve it?
Mm-hmm. Yeah, perfect. No, that sounds super relevant, especially that support from the manager is always super helpful. Like, we're also running surveys with Inential to understand what people, how they prefer to learn, and a big chunk, over 60%, say actually manager support is super critical to them. So this is definitely the interesting or the right way to go. And last question, because I mean, we're slowly going to be running out of time. And then I think if someone has any questions to Thomas or to us, please feel free to start writing them in the chat. We can also, and you can also unmute and ask those questions, but please first write them in the chat. And last question from me, there is a lot of different, solutions for people development. As you said, you can simply just use Notion or Google Sheets or whatever other tool you have at your hand. But what do you think should be relevant for companies to get started with? I mean, you already have some experience. You've been also working with us at Inential or advising us. So what do you think is important in terms of people development, and what kind of solutions people could use? Not thinking only about platforms, but really anything that is out there that would be relevant.
Yeah, I mean, there are, especially in the last couple of years, there were many tools popping up in the market, and they have sometimes very interesting approaches. I think very often on the website and how they present themselves looks really interesting, of course, very catchy, that you will talk to them, and then you test the tool or you go a bit deeper and you see, it's everything but not simple. And for me, simplicity is very important when you implement something like that, because people, it's not everyone's natural field where they feel at home. Basically, if I would approach an engineer and they're writing their code and building features and squads together with other people, and that's where they are experts. But when it comes to people development, they are not experts. So I want to build a system that can be easily used by everyone in the company, and therefore I need to choose tools that are very targeted for my needs at the moment. So there are tools that solving endless amount of needs, and this sounds very interesting because at one point, as I said, you need to have a tool for engagement survey. You want to have a tool maybe for feedback. You want to have a scheduling tool that reminds you to have performance conversations. You want to have this structure, and maybe you want to have a tool for OKRs. So you have already your HR admin system like Personio. Yeah? You have so many tools very quickly, and having then one tool that solves many of those challenges sounds great. But what I figured out is that many of those tools, they are way too complex. So this is something where we now wanted to have something that's very targeted. Like if we want to have access to a library, then this is our biggest pain right now, and this will be also a pain all the time. And people would be really happy if they would get something like that. They were really fascinated when I presented such a solution to them, like Inential would provide. And this was then for me also clear, because I also checked the tool that would solve many more topics. And again, if you are alone, you should not underestimate the implementation of such a tool. If such a tool will be suddenly used to, instead of having OKRs in Notion, and you will do the OKRs now in that tool, instead of having specific performance conversations, instead of your Notion structure in that tool, and an engagement survey in that tool, and then career development in that tool, the implementation and rollout and stakeholder involvement and different needs and all the things, it's huge. And then it's at least for 1 or 2 quarters, it will be your main project, and then you can quickly go too deep on that. And this is very, you need to be careful.
Mm-hmm. Yeah, no, for sure. And we also have seen that actually with our customers, that sometimes they are working on a certain area or bigger rollout of a tool, like for example, rolling out career frameworks or career progressions. That is a big task, and then focusing on this for several months, it never sometimes get even finished because it's such an enormous task, right? But yeah, thanks a lot, Thomas. This is super great. We have some questions in the chat. The first question from Mike Fila is to you, Thomas. How do you allocate the budgets for L&D? Do you dedicate a specific amount per employee, or how does it work?
Yeah. So here we have 500 euros for everyone. We even allocate budget for working students, or we had also working students that approached us. They want to learn. They are with the company already for a while. So for me, this whole learning aspect is really important. So I always see this rather as a kickoff. Ideally, I would work without a dedicated budget. I would just say, start with learning and tell me what you need. And then, because if you want to do a one-day training, 500 euros are already not enough. So I had here, for example, a working student. She wanted to do a specific course for 2,000 euro. So we discussed that she was also able with taking over a small part of it by herself, because she really wanted to do it, and we paid the majority of it. So for me, that's always a starting point. If people start with drafting their personal career path, then they can incorporate budget, they can incorporate those vacation days for learning. It should be connected to that path, and then budget is not really restricted in the first place. But we allocate at the moment 500 euros, and let's say at least to everyone.
Mm-hmm. And just an additional question from me, like, do you do any, let's say, restrictions to these budgets, or is it like free? Everyone just can, go ahead and get any basically thing that they want for this particular budget?
It's at least how we define it. It's not restricted, as it should be connected to a development plan. If you say you want to develop HR analytics in a certain way, and then you start and do a yoga course, then I would ask, how is this connected? But if you would say well-being is a topic, I want to host yoga sessions because the people would be interested here, and that's why I want to do a yoga course, then I would even say you can also use the money for that. So as long as it's connected to a plan, to an idea, where you reflect also what has the business out of it when you do this, I would not restrict this in the first place.
Okay, thanks. Do you guys have any other questions? Feel free to also unmute yourself or raise your hand. I don't know if that's possible here on Zoom, or just write it on chat, and we're happy to answer. I think we still have a few more minutes to do that. And if you wouldn't have questions right now, you can always get in touch with me or Thomas, and I'm pretty sure Thomas will be happy to help out with some additional questions, probably via LinkedIn or so. Yeah. All right. I think I don't see at least any questions so far. I'm just looking at the participant list because I might be missing that right now. So if no questions for now, the recording will be available. I think Maner wrote if the recording will be available on LinkedIn. Yes, we will make the recording available. We will write on LinkedIn. The recording is also going to be available on Inential, so you can easily access it. You can share it and rewatch it whenever you want, whoever joined a bit late. One last thing, if you want to get in touch with us, also with us from Inential, with me, feel free to connect with us via LinkedIn. Also, Dan just shared a link in the chat. If you want to get also a consultation from us at Inential to analyze a little bit more how you want to approach your people development, feel free to reach us there. And yeah, thank you very much, and hope you enjoyed the rest of your day. See you on the next session. See you guys.
Thank you.